Yes, let's start with tea. What you're giving me today?
Oh, I'm giving you today some nettle, some raspberry, some blueberry, and a little bit of hibiscus. So this is a Friday night drink.
I mean, I already smell a little bit of the tea packet and it's like so beautiful. We always have like a different drink if you haven't noticed.
Yeah, it's literally chats over drinks.
Yeah. So let's cheers.
Cheers.
To a nice, lovely chat.
Oh my god, this is so delicious. And nettles are in season. We went nettle foraging the other day in the forest.
Yeah, my fingers are still two
But
of them.
nettles are so good for you. Today's episode is actually... I started with the conversation where Alice was leaving my house. We just literally stood by my front door for like half an hour discussing this. And then we were like, you know what, this should be an episode.
Yeah, that's why we're here today.
Literally, it has started as a chat between two friends. And that's kind of how we want to keep it. We want it to be very authentic and very real. So we're hoping that you're going to join this chat. Today's topic is sustainability. We're going to look at it from two very different perspectives when it comes to two very different body sizes.
Different journeys.
Different budgets. Like there's just... I'm hoping that you can relate to one of the stories at least. Or we give you some, just some perspectives to look at, or just like, I don't know, some light bulb is going to go on and you can start thinking about things differently or doing some research on your own.
Yeah, and this is like our way of easing into the whole subject of sustainability, because that's definitely something we want to talk about, but it's a lot.
It's a really big subject, and I think sustainability has become this, this really trendy word, first of all. It's so much greenwashing going on, but it's also... I think in the beginning when I started like looking into sustainability, it was very like doom and gloom. It was all about how fashion is the second biggest polluter, how, we're destroying the planet with fashion industry. But recently we watched this documentary, which we talked to in the episode that we're going to link down below. That was called the... Fashion Reimagined.
Yes.
That's the one. So first of all, we highly recommended it. But it was the first documentary that I watched about sustainability and about fashion industry that didn't look at it from like this doom and gloom perspective. She actually shows a lot of ideas, and she looks at things from sort of different point of view of how we resolve this whole situation.
Yeah.
So instead of just talking about how bad it is, like let's move forward and see the different avenues that we can take to improve that.
Yeah.
I probably want to mention that sustainability was probably one of the reasons why I have left fashion industry, because I saw how much damage it's doing, how consumerism culture is just insanity, how much stuff we're purchasing, how unnecessary it is, how we don't ask ourselves any questions, we don't know and we don't even think about the whole chain behind the garment that we are wearing. We don't think about the people, we don't think about the fabrics, how they're made, we don't think about how long it takes for that garment to get into your house, how many different countries it has to go through. Like there's just so much. But I think we're at the point where there is no other way. Like we have to start looking at clothes very differently.
100%.
So because you're going through this journey now, when you're kind of getting a little bit more aware, because you are in the social media space, and the social media space is filled with just selling us things. Yeah. Like that's what it has become. Everyone is trying to sell you something, and the hauls and all that kind of stuff. Like how do you look at it from your perspective when you think about sustainability, and how has the idea of it changed recently?
As you're saying, it's very recent. I think maybe in like the last year. Not that I never like thought about it. I've never like been into haul videos. I've never purchased to return, because as a photographer, I just know a lot of the behind the scenes of how things are being made.
Like how influencers are influencing.
Yeah, and a lot of the time, it is this pretty picture of like, look at this wardrobe that I have, and it's, I have a new outfit every single day, and it's different and it's colorful and interesting. But behind that, there's a lot of unnecessary purchasing. There's a lot of buying, returning, and...
So buying it, so you're saying that people buy it just to take a picture and then just return it?
Yes.
So like you create the content and then you just get rid of this?
Yes.
Wow.
So when I first started, straight after university in like 2015, 16, I really quickly fell into the influencer side of things, like taking pictures and videos for influencers. I was a full-time photographer for quite a large influencer in the UK, and I would go to her house. She would be recording videos in her bedroom, and I was in the other bedroom or room editing the video. So it was like really fast paced, like fast. And not just her, but like the whole notion behind influencing at that time, and I think still up to this day, was what is going to perform better on YouTube.
So how do you stay relevant on social media?
Yeah, so obviously buying everything new in. So you go Zara, just add, like it would sometimes go up to like £300.
God.
I know, £300 of things, and like purchasing, then filming a video. This is for YouTube mainly. And then most of the time, everything goes back into the bag and back to the shop. And just thinking back as well, like I said, I was never into it. I would never be like, oh, this is what I need to do as well.
But do you feel like it was something that ever crossed your mind, like to stay relevant on social media?
Yeah.
Would you call yourself an influencer, actually? That's the question that I wanted to ask you. And what does influencer even like mean? Because I find it like such an interesting subject.
A lot of people nowadays don't like the word influencer. It's more...
Why do you think?
So there's a massive difference between influencer and content creator, even though it kind of seems like it's the same thing. But influencer is more like I feel like it's the mindset of I want to influence, I want to be famous, I want to like be the star. I don't know, to me personally. And then content creator is more like people who are more creative with things, and it doesn't necessarily need to be revolved around influencing someone to buy something, but it's more like just, people who do vlog videos, for example, they are creating content. It's like,
but they're still influencing other people.
Not
like
necessarily.
When I think about it, like we all influence each other.
Yeah, from that side, yeah.
So it's just like if you have a platform with a huge following, you just have more people that you're able to influence. But I don't necessarily think about it in the terms of like fashion or creativity. But what I kind of associate influencing with, it's also trying to sell you stuff.
Yes.
So I don't know if you've listened to this podcast that I've sent you.
No.
Oh my gosh, we're going to link it down below. Because
Okay.
I've listened to it, and I forgot the name of the girl. But anyways, it's a podcast called Conscious Chatter. And I really love it because they talk a lot about sustainability from different perspectives. And they talk about influencing and influencers and this kind of notion of what social media has become is this kind of like
machine
platform.
Almost.
Yeah, but also like this platform that's trying to sell you things constantly.
Yeah.
So I think first of all, and it's also becoming easier because we looked at influencers as like when you were following people online, they almost like you could relate to them more than to a brand that has a poster or that advertises in a magazine, because you kind of have a human being behind this product. But on the flip side, they're using that kind of notion of like, oh, I feel like I know you as a friend because I've been following you for 3 years. And then when that person is trying to sell you things, you're probably more likely to buy that just because you're thinking that that person is actually using it and they're actually loving it. And, you have this human connection as well as, someone selling you something. So I think if you're not aware of it, it's very likely that you're going to be like, oh, this person's loving it. And, I've been loving that person for 3 years. So I must love that product too.
True, yeah. In that sense, that it's always going to come into play when it comes to following.
Yeah.
But I think it's more, I'm looking at the intention that influencer has, because there's a lot of people who don't really care about their audience in the sense of like, I want to influence people to do, I don't know, to buy a course, like let's say. That's not a necessarily bad thing, but when it comes to...
but influencing could be a good and bad thing.
Exactly.
Like, it doesn't have to be necessarily this negative connotation that influencer now has.
And that's what I'm trying to like remove myself from, like, quote unquote the bad side of influencing, just making you buy everything from. I mean, we can get into the conversation of sustainability here, because I did a whole month and actually 6 weeks in total of no buy. So I didn't purchase anything. I maybe like purchase something on Vinted, but that was like after a very long research. It wasn't what I used to do. Like, I would go into a store, if I liked something, I would buy it.
A lot of like impulse buying then.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, if you go into high street, everything is relatively cheap. So it kind of seems like, oh, it doesn't affect me, it doesn't affect my wallet that much. Well, it does, we can get into
in the
it
long run, right?
yeah, but in that moment you think, oh, £25, like, okay, fine, I'll buy it. So yeah, I did the whole month or 6 weeks of no buy, and my whole like shopping habits have completely changed. So I almost want to suggest everyone, especially who are in a space where they do buy quite a lot of things, try at least like 1 month not to buy anything. Try to watch some documentaries, you know, listen to podcasts, educate yourself, and like kind of just start reshaping, because it's not going to happen in one day. You can't just wake up and be like, you know what, no, sustainability, I can do this. You know, it's not going to happen. Like, it's not, maybe for some people, but I think on like a bigger scale, not everyone can do it. And it has to start somewhere. So my journey definitely started from this 1 month of being very, very conscious. And now if I go into a high street store, even if I do the try on videos that I do on my TikTok, where I try on things as a curvy girl to see if it's fitting or like what the material is, or before there were a lot of temptations. There was a lot of like, oh, I want to buy this, and then I would. And now I've been in stores many times, and even if I have that temptation, there's a lot of thought that goes through my head, just what you said, like where the garment's been, like if the people creating it, you know, how they've been treated, and a lot of those things do go through my mind now, and I often just put it back. So
it's interesting, because I thought about it, I messaged you, I was like, I've realized that since the beginning of the year, it's almost May, I've purchased 4 things. And they were very, like, I thought through those purchases, they were quite important and like really well researched, and I was also really aware of like, who am I supporting if I buy this piece of clothing? What kind of brand, and what's the value behind the brand that I am supporting? And I think that's really important, and I think it should be like a normalized thing. Like when it comes to food, we think about more and more where this food comes from. Is it organic? Like, who made it? At least slowly. I feel like it's way too slow, but just the awareness is there, and yet when it comes to fashion industry, it really isn't.
Because I think that's why I think like this subject is so heavy, because there's so many different people, where they come from and why they're purchasing things. But like most of my friends are influencers, and just looking through the prism of that, and like being around the whole social media space, it is something that just, it has to change. Because, you know, if you do work on social media and you are influencing, like you mentioned, like whatever you do influence people, you have to
be aware of it first of all.
Be aware of it, sit down with yourself and be like, is this something that I want to promote and stand by? That's a question that I really asked myself, and you know, I've been trying to repurpose everything that I have in my wardrobe, and look, I'm not naked. You know, I've got enough to wear. It's just that the pressure of, am I going to stay relevant? Is it going to be like, am I going to be cool? Like within this month or like 6 weeks, I learned that, you know, you can stay relevant, and actually it's even better than before.
You just have to think outside of the box.
And I think people are also craving that, like different kind of information, different kind of
do you think people are just sick of like shit being sold to them constantly on every single platform they look at?
You must be, because you know, even the trend that was what was it called? The
de-influencing.
That's it. I never took part of it, but I saw it everywhere. And like, people.
But it's interesting because in this podcast that I've mentioned to you, the girl talks about this trend of de-influencing, and she says how it started in like a really good thing, because people are actually telling you like, don't buy this, you don't need this, like you don't, but it sort of turned into this, you don't need this, but instead of that you might want to get this. Which sort of totally like flipped, and now it's like, I'm not selling you this, but I might sell you this if you really want to, which is like, total crap. Like, honestly.
And I just wish that every person could sit before they buy something with the knowledge. Your purchase. Yeah, like just think about it.
So what sort of advice, like, do you ever have any chats with like friends that are influencers about sustainability?
No, not really.
Why not?
There's so much money into it. There's just so much that people are earning through influencing.
Yeah, but at what cost?
Well, but people don't think about that.
But do you not ever want to even like start the conversation with someone? Like, I understand they're living off of social media. Like, I get that, but I don't know. Like, I don't have any friends that do that. But if I did, like, I would love to sit down and have a conversation, because it's not necessarily like this is my opinion and you should be following it, but like, I would love to even sit with someone and like try to understand their point of view on that subject.
100%.
Because it's like, are you not educated about it? Do you just totally ignore it? Ignorance is bliss. Like, do you putting money over your values? Like, do you have any values that, you know, like, I'm trying to really like understand and I don't.
Okay, first of all, from my side, I think I haven't done it in the past because I didn't have my own views like firmly,
right,
you know, my 2 feet in the ground to have that conversation. And that's why I really want to explore this space, also like our conversations that we've had and the podcasts that I've listened to and you know, everything that I consumed in the last couple of months, like
having a knowledge behind actually.
Exactly. So if someone asks me a question, I have something to say rather than like, oh, I don't know, you know. So definitely in the future, I want to have those conversations because I think it's very important. And just like, maybe they have never had this question asked to them, so they've never thought, you know, once you're in the influencer bubble, like it's a firm bubble, you know, like everyone is doing the same thing. Everyone's talking about, you know, how much you've made, how many campaigns. What did I say?
Yeah, campaigns. There's like numbers and money.
Yes, and you have to look at society as a whole. Yes, like as an individual, you should start making changes, and I think that's why it's so important that on social media there are people who are starting to implement like different ways of doing things. Yeah. But at the same time, it's going to take a long time, but also as a society, what do people want? Success. What does success mean? Money, big house, luxury items, and how can you attain that is through, you know, getting massive campaigns, and that those are not necessarily sustainable. So this is where I think the massive issue is as well. Because even with myself, I'm going to be completely honest with you. Like, I've thought about like, well, how am I going to earn money if I suddenly like don't fit into this like box of, you know, what an influencer or content creator should look like. Yeah. And we had this conversation in the car, I think, and I was like, I'm at the point where I'm going to see where it goes, because actually, I was so scared doing the whole challenge of no buy and repurposing my wardrobe, but that actually performed way better than I expected. Right. And people were so interested in, and like I still get comments, people telling me to keep going because it's like really inspiring them to do the same. And
I mean, it's when you're surrounded by like adverts. I mean, you open like even Vogue as fashion magazine. Half of that Vogue is adverts. So from your point of view of being curvy, do you feel that it's harder to be sustainable?
Yes.
Is it? Why do you think that is?
Well, there's not a lot of sustainable brands, period, I think. Like for any size. Like on an accessible price point. It's also not so accessible in a sense, like you just don't know where to look. So there's a lot of research that needs to go into it, and then you find a brand and then it goes up to like large, which, you know, on some cases is fine, but when I'm looking at like thinking of a bigger scale of plus size world, large is not good enough. And even for myself, sometimes I just look at things and I'm like, that really wouldn't fit me, or it would like not be comfortable. Obviously, I'm not talking about re-wearing because we kind of like touched on it. I think that's the best way like, to be
because
sustainable.
When I think about sustainability, like it's really interesting how in fashion industry we focus on like what brands are sustainable. which for me, that isn't really what sustainability is.
Right, I agree.
Sustainability is like wear what you already have.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, most of us have a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that for me, it doesn't matter like what size you are, you still have clothes in your wardrobe.
Yeah. I think, I should have started with that. I think I sometimes skip information.
And this is like, duh, like obviously.
Duh. Exactly. I think that should be like the first thing in everyone's mind, just like rewear what you already have, and also like swapping, like let's say, you know, maybe you're the same size with your sister or friend, and you can kind of like borrow things and so on. For a long time, I was also scared of thrifting, going into vintage stores or like even Vinted or Depop. I was kind of like, this whole world I couldn't understand. I couldn't really find anything for my size that didn't look too grandma. No offense. But like everything is just like, you know, cute little florals and like shapeless dresses. That has a lot to do with also developing personal style, and we've touched on it in previous episodes. And confidence, and just like really developing your persona. Right. And I think once you...
Where does developing of the persona start, do you reckon?
Just knowing yourself, like work on yourself.
Yeah, because I feel like the sustainability journey should really start with what my values are in life in general, when it comes to everything. Because if you have your values and they're really strong and you're like, you know what, like I don't want to be supporting people that encourage child labor, and you know, I don't want to be supporting brands that don't pay their workers, and like all of those little questions that you ask yourself, and that could be any type of purchase that you make. And I think if your values are not strong, or if you don't even know what your values are, then we can't really talk about sustainability.
This is true. And I think what I want to mention is, and I think you disagree with that, but I'm going to say anyway.
Go on.
I think when you start like your journey of like trying to be more conscious of what you're buying and why you're buying things, I still think that it's okay to buy a few pieces here and there from like high street. When I'm just thinking internally how my journey started like a few months ago, and how I just walking into a vintage store, I just felt so overwhelmed and just so lost, and I just felt embarrassed also.
But in between that overwhelm and lost, like has that ever crossed your mind, like that question, like who am I supporting, like who made this? And at what cost? So even with that question, no, but what I'm trying to say is like when you got into the vintage shop and you're like, oh my god, I'm so overwhelmed, I don't even know where to look, like has those questions like entered your mind in any time at any point, to be like, before you feel overwhelmed, I'm gonna go to Zara instead because it's so much easier, like have you thought, oh shit, like I don't really I'm supporting, you know, all of those.
But what's your view, let's say, going into a vintage store and having, like, buying a second-hand Zara piece, and then buying something from Zara store, but wearing it for, like, the next 5 days?
I honestly, to be perfectly honest, like, I would go and shop secondhand over going to a high street any day, because I feel like we don't need any more new fashion. That's why the secondhand stores are overloaded with the high street. So think about the amount of clothes that's already there. Why would I be supporting someone making more? Like, I'm not going to.
When people shop less from high street, that kind of signals to the brand.
Yeah. I mean, if all of us really sat with ourselves and thought about who am I supporting and where I'm putting my money and who's going to get it, I mean, that would really change your shopping habits overnight.
Yeah.
And it's the same with, like, I have Levi's, which are vintage, and I don't support Levi as a brand. Like, what they're doing isn't good. If you do some research, I mean, it's fucking shocking. But the Levi's that I have, I'm going to wear them. I've been wearing them for almost 10 years, and I'm going to wear them for another 10 years, because it's almost like I honor the people that have made that piece of clothing.
Yeah.
You know?
This is true.
I know that they were not paid very well, and the conditions they were making the clothes aren't great, and all of those things that like make me feel very overwhelmed when I even think about it, and really sad, like makes me want to honor that piece of clothing so much more. So I don't need to buy another pair of jeans. And I think this is the other thing, like we live in a world where we're bombarded by the trends. Like we talk about it a lot on the podcast.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you have to have new this and new that, and this is coming out, and it is very overwhelming, and it's almost like you just forget to even step back and be like, well, am I buying this because I need it? Because I bet you that you don't need it.
Like I said it at the start, I think everyone should just start with not buying anything for a month, and you will realize how much you have. Because honestly, coming from someone who always thought I don't have enough in my wardrobe, I have this small little wardrobe, and I just felt like, oh my god, like everyone else has like a bigger wardrobe. Obviously they have more things to wear than me. And then now I'm like, actually, and another thing is buying things that you really love rather than following trends. So, you know, I realized that probably like the last maybe year or so, I've been really buying just the things that I love. And even though, yes, they are from high street most of the time, like I'm gonna have them for a while because they really represent me. And now that I have that, I can look at it in a different light, in a sense of like, I'm not going to buy more because this is enough. And I think if we all just even started from that mindset,
Just
you know, that's the starting point. Have. Yeah, exactly. And when it comes to plus size, I really want to like touch on that because I do agree that you can buy a lot. Like I've been so hooked on Vinted. I think we spoke about this in another episode, how I used to browse on ASOS just like mindlessly, not even buying, just like, you know, you can like it and save it. And now I do that on Vinted and Depop, and there's like a whole gallery for me. And I think, yes, it's scary as a plus size or curvy person because it is a little bit daunting, and it's a little bit like, ooh, I don't know if I'm going to find anything that's my size. Sit with yourself and really just educate yourself and just go through the app. And, you know, day by day, you will start recognizing, you know, what you need to be doing in order to find something on Vinted that is going to fit your style. But I want to put the message out there, like I'm a size 16, 18, and I can find a lot of things.
This is like, if I can do it, you can do it too.
Yes.
And also like, think about who are you supporting online. What kind of influencers are influencing you? And what are they influencing you to buy? Because I feel like that's also really important. Like really question that.
Be mindful.
Be very mindful.
Because people are just trying to sell you things that they probably don't even want to wear. So obviously your sustainability journey has been longer than mine.
Yeah.
And I feel like you have loads of like really cool pieces in your wardrobe, and there's a story behind it. I guess my question would be, what is the first thing you do or think about when you see a brand, like you discover a brand on, I don't know, Instagram, like pops up something. Yeah. Like, how do you do your research to really know that this is something I can go behind and support?
I think first I would go into the website and see how transparent they are when it comes to who made their clothes and where did the fabric come from and the whole ethos behind the brand. Because I feel these days every other brand is sustainable. And it's not entirely true.
This is why I'm asking this, because a lot of people are like greenwashing.
Yeah, there's a lot of greenwashing. So don't look like, if you look at the brands, most of them would have sustainable in the like the, what's it called, the bio.
Yeah.
On Instagram.
So dig a bit deeper.
Yeah, just go into the website, you know, see how sustainable they are. See how much, you know, where are the garments coming from? Who is making them? Where did the fabric come from? Are they organic? Where do they, like, research the fabric? Where did they get it from? Like, all of those little pieces. And I know it's a lot of research, but it goes back to, like, we don't really need that much clothes. We already have a lot. So be very picky and very choosy with what brands are you supporting. Yeah. So don't just go with the label of sustainability, because that isn't enough and it shouldn't be enough. And the other thing is, obviously, like we talk about mother of pearl. And I think mother of pearl, if you go into their website and you see their ethos and like what sustainability means to them, I feel like that should be a golden standard for whatever any other brand is. Yeah. To be perfectly honest, they are so transparent about everything they do, and the whole story and the ethos behind the brand is something that I support 1,000%. So if you don't really know, I would encourage you to go to that website, read what they have to say, and then based on that, see if other brands that you're thinking about supporting or buying from really align with that. So that would be my biggest advice, to be honest.
And what do you think of renting clothing? Because I feel like there's a little bit of it came onto the scene as like this
sustainable option.
Ooh, it's gonna be amazing. But now I'm seeing more and more people talking about how like actually it's not even that great.
I have never rented anything, first of all, so I can't give you a first-hand experience. What I don't like about it, I'm going to say first, because I feel like let's just start with what I don't like.
Yeah.
What I don't like is the fact that this piece of clothing still has to get into your house somehow. And
get cleaned as well.
Get dry cleaned. And also, if you look at the brands that are doing the whole rental, there is still a lot of like new things.
Yeah.
You know, they still based on trends.
Yeah.
At least from my perspective, that's how I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
So is it a better option? I don't think it is, because it still wants you to get something new. It still like thrives on this idea of newer the better.
So it's almost like it's not necessarily that the person is sustainable. Maybe they just don't want to spend X amount of money on a dress.
So they're going to spend less, but they're still going to get... But it's, again, like behind it, it's still like, let's get something new, let's get something new, let's get something new. I can't buy it, I might as well rent it. And I think that's what we have to really step back from. This whole like the newer the better thing that we like being fed.
We are really anti-trend. I realized like this
I
has
think I've always been anti-trend.
Yeah, but like the more I'm thinking about it, like coming from a influencer background or like what I'm doing, it's like I'm getting more and more like,
I like put a spell on Alice. Like, no more. But I think the more you educate yourself, the more you realize like what's happening. I mean, recently there were this huge protest in Manchester and London in regards to Rana Plaza, which was a huge building that collapsed in Bangladesh, I believe. It killed thousands of people, and then the brands that had the clothes made there were mostly like brands that we see on the high street. And then the people didn't get much support. I mean, the building was in a terrible condition. People were working in terrible conditions. But this is not something that makes, first page news. It's not something that's talked about a lot, because it's not in the favor of the high street, and it's not in the favor of this whole consumerism culture that we live in. And I think it's something that should be everywhere, splashed around. And it's a very sad truth, and it's very doom and gloom, and you're seeing those people and you're just like, oh my god, I can't believe this is happening in the 21st century. But that's what you gave the money. You gave the money to a brand that supported that. So essentially you are supporting that.
And maybe actually you're going to be cool if you don't support those brands, because I think the big fear is I'm going to lose out on money, I'm going to not be relevant anymore, like from social media kind of. Because I feel like not even influencers, but like people who are on social media, like post pictures of, new things and outfits and stuff like that. And I feel like just start with yourself. Find out what your true self and your style is. Let's start there. So you can't be really influenced left, right and center to try all these new things, because the more I realize what my style is, the more I understand that, every brand and every trend is not for me. So I'm not going to buy into it, not going to even look that way. So if more people realize that it's not their style, that will even reduce the influence.
Yeah,
maybe. And the impact.
I don't know, for me it's values, like values and values and values, and think about what values you have and who you're supporting, and educate yourself, because when you start educating yourself on this subject, you
can't go back.
you can't unsee what you've seen, and there's some shocking truths to be seen. So I think maybe that's really important.
Let's try and link some...
Yeah, there's 2 documentaries that I can think of that I'm going to link, which are just some shocking truths.
Yeah.
I think the one is called The Cost of Fashion. I don't know if you've seen it. Oh my god, I cried watching it.
See, I'm scared of that, but we should all watch it.
But I think those are really important. And I'm also going to link some books. There's like a bunch of really good books and a bunch of really good podcasts, like if you do want to educate yourself. And again, it's all about our choices, and I think we have so much power to change this dynamic that is happening right now of influencing, of buying into things, thinking that we need it, that's going to make us feel a certain way. So going back into where you're putting your money, into whose pocket, and what is that person doing with it.
I think in another episode we're going to talk about how like materials, what materials you should be putting on your body, and like what it means if you're wearing polyester and all of that. Like there's so much that we need to go into as well. It's from that perspective.
Really interesting. Really interesting. Well, Alice, I feel like I've learned a little bit looking at things from a different perspective. And again, it's not about agreeing or disagreeing. It's like showing what our perspective means to us and why we think the way we do. And again, you don't have to agree with me, because I know like my point of view on the subject is quite strong. But I'm just hoping that you will educate yourself at least. And you start asking some deeper questions.
It starts somewhere. Really maybe one day I'll be like you, We're just like building blocks.
But yeah, it was a really good chat. Thank you so much, Alice.
Thanks guys for joining us as well.
Hope you learned something, and let us know your thoughts on sustainability. I would love to hear what your thoughts on this subject are.
We'll see you next week.
See you soon.
Bye.